We are here today with Ian Kirkpatrick, and doggy's name is
Tate.
Tate. Hello, Tate. Thank you for joining us. Just to start, if you want to tell us a bit about yourself, your creative work, and your YouTube channel.
Hi, well, I'm Ian Kirkpatrick on YouTube, and I mostly write comedy or dark comedy, satire that is not laugh out loud satire, and magical realism. One of the things, like my big thing is Bodymore, or the Bodymore series, because it's going to have 4 books, and that's the most in a single setting that I have so far. And
Wow.
it merges a mysticalness and ghosts with just real life. So you know how like life feels like there's a mystical layer to it. You've got the angels or the demons or the ghosts, and we're all kind of just living with this casual mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I like to do with my work, and that's what's in Bodymore is you get this girl who's living in Baltimore, Maryland, and her best friend goes missing. And then she discovers that there is a ghost town underneath Baltimore, and that
Oh,
so much of Baltimore is just haunted. And so it's got a whole take on ghosts that is just how things interact with the living. And so that's what I like to do is mix kind of casual mysticism with reality.
that's very cool. It's a genre that I love. I would absolutely read that. I'll have to look into that more.
Do you have a recommendation for one of your favorite
No,
books of that genre?
honestly, no. Like I haven't read enough of it. I think like the first thing that got me into that, casual working out of magic into sort of a more realistic story was Shakala, but I think like most people know that one. It's not really out there. My mom actually has a number of books that she's like, okay, here's your list to read. So I'm gonna have to ask her at some point. But whenever I've seen that done, I love it because I'm someone who's very interested in fantasy and hauntings and horror and stuff like that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely up my alley.
I'm always looking for really cool ghost stories.
Okay. Yeah, if I come across some really good ones, I'm gonna tell you. Because right now I'm rereading a lot of books from my childhood, so that's what
Oh,
I'm mired in. Because I'm working on this fantasy novel that I've been working on since I was 13, so I'm trying to go back to what led up to it and read all those things and get it back in my brain again and see where the initial little threads came from. So I'm
mhm.
lost in childhood land at the moment. It's
It
been it's
sounds fun.
yeah, yeah. And you also have a YouTube channel. It's one of the things
Yep.
that sort of brought all the authors together for this project.
So a lot of what I do on my YouTube channel is more deep literary analysis. When I'm reading a book, I like to go through as much of the synopsis as I can reasonably do of the story so that then when I start talking about how elements of the story work together, then the audience, whether they've read the book or not, can see what I'm talking about with like, does this click together with that? Did they build the anticipation from back here, or did this item get dropped off? Because I don't feel like there is enough kind of discussion of full book craft on YouTube. And then when I'm not doing that, I kind of just talk about random book topics that I want to maybe have a discussion on, sometimes cover book news, or I play video games twice a week.
Awesome.
And we have a
Yeah,
book club on Friday where
on
we just
Friday.
read a book together.
I need to get every time I talk to one of our authors individually, I'm like, okay, I need to get in on everything that you're doing, and I have this vast list of things because it's so interesting. Like, I love it. So, what inspired you to submit a piece to the Stygian Collection?
Well, I liked the description of what the project was doing. I had that story, The Carpenter, from previous that I wrote previously before, but it never had a home. And then reading that, I was like, I feel like this would be the home for it. And then I got to know both you and Pei through seeing some of your content and the way that you talked. And I really wanted to work with you. So I thought, why not submit and see if they want to work with me?
Awesome. And it the Carpenter is such a great addition to the collection. I love it because I mean I don't want to give spoilers, but I don't think there's any other piece really that well there's a couple. So like we have these elements that somehow have come together, but that childhood element, you've explored that like through the whole story. And I think you and OG Rose both have this similarity with your pieces that's children dealing with something darker. And I really like bringing that into the story because we've kind of been able to go through a lot of different stages of the human life cycle in the collection.
Mm-hmm. What I really liked with that book, with that story too, and I didn't initially start it because I was just reading the characters or writing the characters while I was doing it. But you can see references with all of them for different styles of horror, and that it's got its own sort of not criticism, but commentary on like how different people view horror. And some will say, well, that's not actually horror. My version of horror is real horror.
Yeah. It is true. And, again, without giving spoilers, do you want to give like a little bit of a summary of your piece just for anyone who hasn't read it yet?
The best way to describe it is that there are just these four kids at recess that go and hide on the playground and start telling each other their own versions of scary stories to outdo one another.
Yes.
And you'll have to be the one to judge whose story was the scariest.
Mm-hmm. My mom, who's also our editor, Pamela, I remember when she was reading your story, she does a lot of children's writing, like lower, like middle grade and a bit younger. And she was reading that. She's like, I just love this so much because, the children's voices were captured so perfectly. And I think you did do that really well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, as a creator on YouTube, and also, you're doing a lot of creative stuff, writing and YouTube, how do you balance the demands of all of these things?
I don't have a weekend.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Because I also work during the week. I work a normal 40-hour-a-week job.
Me too.
And so, and then you have to figure out how to balance it with that. And so then I go, well, Sundays are mostly video making and editing days. And then sometimes that bleeds over into the week if I can only record on Sunday and then I have to get stuff cut up before they go up live during the week. And then I just find spots like break times at work to work in writing. And that's pretty much it. It's just finding where you can stick stuff and then saying goodbye to social interactions elsewhere.
Yes, and we are recording this on a Sunday afternoon. We will note.
I try to make accommodations. So I did some recording yesterday. So I move stuff around based on things.
Yeah, my mom and I usually do a weekly brunch, and this week I was like, it can't be that long because I have to go do other things to do our interview. But
I was just actually talking with my grandmother about this earlier because we went to lunch earlier, and she's like, "Do you ever take a day off? Because every time I look over at you, you look like you're always working on something."
Yeah. That's I find there are very few days off, but at least it's like it's creative stuff that you're passionate about, so that really helps. Yeah. For your day job, do you have to go into an office or do you work at home at least? Oh my
No,
God.
I have to go into an office.
Yeah, I found it became infinitely easier when I moved to the like working at home format, so that did help a lot. But yeah, I've had those days. I used to work at an art supply store for a while in a university, and I would do stocking, and I would have like the little notepads for writing down what we needed, but I would just write my stories on them. So I would pretend I was working, walking around, like, oh yeah, we need some more pens, and anyway, this paragraph.
I used to do that when I did demo work in Alaska. So I was one of the food demo people in not Costco, Sam's Club. I worked in Sam's Club. And so I would like stuff note paper into my drawer underneath my counter. And so when no one was there, I would just take my stuff out. I'd start writing on the piece of paper and then put it back when I saw somebody walking down the aisle.
I love that. I love hearing these little ways in how we in our everyday life manage to fit creativity in. It's always cool to hear. It's like, what sneaky things are we all doing? So you said you already had the Carpenter written before this this call came out. Do you have any anecdotes or sort of memorable experiences that are related to the process of writing this piece?
Well, for this piece specifically, Scotty is a character that I've had for, I think, at least since 2012, maybe 2011. And he was created as a 17 or 18-year-old. And I actually made him with my best friend of all time. I met my best friend in 2008. And we met online and we've still been best friends. I actually just saw him last week. Yeah, because he went home on Wednesday. So we've been friends all of this time, and we created these characters to go together, and we've been creative partners for a very long time. So then Scotty and Steph were already in existence. And then I think I was doing a random writing exercise for myself, because there was a year that I was just giving myself random word generators and then like a timer to write a story with whatever came out with that. And I think this was one of those exercises where the Carpenter was one of those words that I was given. And
Okay.
so, and
You
so then
ran with
I just ran with it.
it. I love that because I too had a best friend that I met online. Unfortunately, she and I, we're way less in contact than we were before, but we were RPG buddies, and we would write back and forth on MSN Messenger.
We did
And
the
we,
same
yeah,
thing.
I still have it saved. We have a RPG that got to be about, because we'd always save the conversation after, and it got to be like 9,980 pages or something like that. So I
Oh,
just have this
wow.
massive document of it all, and a lot of it is deeply embarrassing, but but
Hey, it's what gave you some of the writing chops you have today.
exactly. And one of the novels I'm coming up with now that I'm working on, I have to edit it. My like long-term one is based on that RPG, but I took it and made it a lot more cohesive and brought the characters up a few levels and stuff. So I still have that inspiration, and it's so fun to have those partnerships like that, especially when you meet them online.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're so far away, but we vibe creatively so well.
Yep, I have two of those right now, and I met one of them just last year, and then Sam was a long time ago. And going strong is you can see a touch of Sam in like everything that I do. He's
Hmm.
got one of his characters I wrote into the Bodymore series. One of his characters I wrote into Dead End Drive. And then he did the covers for all of my books.
Oh, cool. Oh, is it you said Sam, is that our artist, the keychain artist?
Yes.
Okay. Those keychains are so cute. I love his art.
I love it too. I have like four of his keychains on my keys.
Yeah, they're so cute. The little raven. Everyone that I've been able to like hand that to, because we had some, contributors to the Kickstarter. They're like, "Oh my God, what? It's so adorable." So thank
I've
you
been,
for contributing those.
I'm glad I could.
Um, I'm sort of jumping around with YouTube and writing here in my line of questioning, since that is our one of our big elements that brings us together. So how do you feel about being part of an anthology that features the works of other creators here on YouTube?
I'm really honored because I like being in communication specifically with other artists or other people in the community, and I can't say that I'm the best at constantly being in communication. I will admit to that. But I also
Me
think
too.
that it's so hard to remain contacted. But when you can start building those communities and building those rivers in order to remain contact and be able to have creative conversations, that's my favorite thing. And like what you were saying earlier, with somehow there are themes in the collection that sort of cross over and they
Hmm.
somehow, that's I think one of the more mystical ideas of creatives being in conversation without necessarily knowing it.
Hmm. That's
Because
very
sometimes you
true.
have the creator that creates something specifically in response to somebody else. Maybe they'll never talk to that person, but they're like, I was inspired by this thing, so I'm going to write this other thing or create this song. But in other cases, you have this where maybe a bunch of people somehow tap into the same creative stream and end up telling a full story together by just being on themes together.
Hmm. That's a really good point to make. Because it's fascinating how everyone interprets that, and we left it pretty wide open, right? Just Stygian, and what is your interpretation on this? And there's so many differences, but so many similarities. And I always say to people, like, if you're picking up the anthology, especially if you're someone who's buying it because of creating supporting one particular author, just read the whole thing because it works so well as a unit. And
Mm-hmm.
I love how that came together. That was one of the most exciting things for me, especially because we selected the stories, but then when we got together, like I printed them all and we laid them out on the floor of our workspace here, and we figured out the order in which they would be in the book. And once we started doing that, we're like, yeah, this is an amazing body of work here. And I think we did tap into something similar. It's very mystical.
Mm-hmm. And I love the way that in doing something like an anthology, you can be introduced to so many different people and kind of get an idea of how they are.
Yeah, and I am hoping, like, as people who are doing so much, I think we all relate to each other with the, okay, we want to have this community, but it's hard to stay in touch. So I am really
Hmm.
hoping that at least like I'm going to get the Discord going, and at least through our network, like that Excel sheet, we can see what everyone's working on and look into it and share it and reach out if we want to and stuff like that and keep it going.
And now that I'm back, I'm going to try to get better on top of it, because for the last like week and a half, I have been not available for most part.
You got to do that sometimes though.
Yup.
What, now that it's out in the world, what are your hopes and expectations for the Stygian collection and how it will be received by readers and also your followers?
I hope that whoever finds it, that it will inspire like any of the stories or any of the characters. It doesn't even have to be a whole story, but some of the characters in there might inspire some of the readers to go and either maybe write their own thing, be it a song, or they want to write a video game, or they want to write a story or get started in something. And they go, I see this and I like something about this so much that I want to go and do something too. And
That's
it
the
doesn't have
best
to be
thing.
all with an anthology. Like from graduate school, I read so many anthologies that were like thick, and you're not going to love every story in an anthology, but all you need is that one that speaks to you to be like, I want to do something because of this. It's the same as listening to a music album and you hate every song on that album except for one, but you can't stop listening to that one song.
That one just hits you. It hits you the
Yeah.
right way. I agree. I am someone who loves fostering creativity and getting other people to start creating and not be afraid of doing that. So if we can inspire someone, that would be wonderful. And I've been inspired by reading all of your works too, because I'm reading them and I'm not good at short stories. So I read them like, okay, I got to analyze these more because these are all so well done and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it someday. Gonna
Short
tackle
stories are
it.
hard.
They are. I'll write epics forever and ever and ever. Like the one I'm just editing is at 114,000 words, but you give me 10 pages and I'm losing my mind. So in your opinion, how does the act of writing for this sort of project differ from the other creative work that you do? Like what sort of different things do you get out of it when you write versus when you're creating videos and sort of communicating within a community?
um, so when I'm writing, I don't know how your writing process is, so maybe you'll have to tell me, because I love listening to how other creatives also write. But I can't start really writing into something unless I have tapped into the character voice. And I don't need like a plot necessarily. I'll figure out the plot later. But I have to have the character's voice, and then they'll talk in a very specific way, and then that will guide me. Sometimes I don't even have a name. And so that is very different than when I'm doing videos, because when I'm doing videos, I'm either just analyzing what I'm doing or I'm presenting a topic to talk about. But over here, I'm channeling a character living in a situation, and I am just being that at that moment, if that makes sense.
It does. I like that. It's an interesting way to start because so for me, I get into that, but
Hmm.
I'm kind of linear in a lot of ways with my plotting and planning, and I'm also very visual. So I was talking about this with Bonsart actually, that I have a comic background, like graphic novels, because my dad works in Marvel and DC. So I grew up seeing, like Superman and everything on his computer monitor when he would be coloring, and I very much learned that language. So for me, I will really formulate the whole character appearance and then they become built, and then once I get into the world, then I really start embodying the character. So I like that the character comes to you first and you have that sort of voice in the ether before anything else.
And it's very similar for me too, is their personality comes and then their name typically comes, and then their appearance comes, and all of those have to fit together, or their personality doesn't come out right. And as soon as
Yeah.
they all click together, then I just absolutely hear the voice. My best example of this that I like to use is Jan from my book Boom Boom Boom,
Mhm.
because I've been watching Strange Angel, and I don't know if you know that show. It's
I
about Jack Parson and
I've
the invention of rocket fuel.
Oh, okay.
So Jack Parson was a Thelemite. He got involved with Aleister Crowley.
Oh,
And
excellent.
and he
Oh,
was a
yeah.
scientist, and everyone was saying that he was crazy, that we're not going to the moon. You're never going to build anything that can go through the atmosphere. But he was so passionate and so eccentric. And this goes back to the thing I said earlier about creatives inspiring other creatives, because I saw his energy and his eccentricism, and I was like, I want a character that is like this, that is eccentric and passionate and just purely in love with what he's doing. And that turned into this feeling of this. He was either going to be Russian or Ukrainian. I didn't know why. That's just what I was feeling. And he was an explosive specialist. And so then I just had that. And then I had his name was Jan. And so then I had that, but I had no plot until I brought it up to my mom like 6 months, 7 months later when I was finishing the first Bodymore and I was like ready to move on to the next project. And so I mentioned these character aspects, but I was like, but what is he doing? I don't know if he's a main character or a side character or what. And then my mom said, well, what if he is doing explosives for YouTube? So then you've just got this Slav in the middle of nowhere doing explosives for YouTube, and that spawned the whole thing. And so then the way that I work is now I know what he's doing at the start. I know exactly who his voice is because I can hear it the way that he talks.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I can just stick him in that situation and sort of just follow him doing what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And sort of like with your comics background, I have a background in theater. And so then I approach my writing in that way, where every time when we were in school, the professors would say, your character, when you're coming on stage, you're always coming from somewhere to do something. And then you're getting interrupted by something. And so then every time I write a story, I'm in that character's space thinking, what are they doing in the scene? What are they trying to get to? And what is getting in their way of getting to that thing? And sometimes they can go directly to it and other times they can't. But I have to apply that principle to every character in the scene. And that's how I write.
That's a very good way to write, because I'm trying to remember, there is something on writing about how there needs to be some sort of obstacle every certain number of sentences. Like there needs to be a new obstacle on every page to keep your story moving. So working in that way does keep things happening rather than you just getting in this rut of like, yeah, they got up and they had lunch and everything was fine. It was good. You need some sort of obstacle, whether it's emotional or a physical barrier or other people around you and stuff. So for people who are learning how to write, that's excellent advice.
Yep. I like to go with the Meisner method, which is a specific acting method.
Okay.
And so we always have a reason for being where we are and doing what we're doing, even if it's just we're sitting in our room on the computer. Why are we there? Well, because there's nothing else to do and we're entertaining ourselves. So there is always a reason behind exactly what we're doing. And so what you do with Meisner, and this is a super basic explanation of Meisner. So like if any acting nerds are in here, they'll be like, actually, but one of the experiences that I had was doing Meisner scenes in class. And so the requirement was you would be given a scene partner. And so that partner would come into the scene and they would need something, but you would already be in the scene and you would have something to do. And so now you've got conflicting needs. So one of those situations was I needed to get to the airport because my plane was leaving soon. So I was packing my bag so I could go. And then one of my classmates was coming to the door because his cat was missing and he needed me to help him with his cat. And so now we've got these two people. He needs to convince me to help him find the cat and I need to convince him to go. And one of us has to give. Mm-hmm. However, also during Meisner, the goal is to only make observations about the other person.
Okay.
So you don't ask questions.
Okay.
As minimally as you can, because what gets more of a response out of someone is you don't want to talk to me, as opposed to, are you busy? Mm-hmm. Because if I'm packing my bag and not looking at him, he's going to notice I don't really want to talk to him.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I was always terrified of acting when I was younger. I went into I went to do a musical theater class and they wanted us to sing karaoke on the first day and I literally ran out of the room and never went back.
No.
But hearing that, I am someone who likes looking into other areas of creativity and seeing how that can work on your writing, because I think as a writer you have to take inspiration everywhere, right? And that sounds fascinating. And in the world of improv and stuff, that would make you really think on your feet about, oh, wait, what do I do and how do I solve this? And you have to do that sometimes as a writer.
Yep. So then in any book, it ends up being my folly when I'm reading a book, because I'm sitting here looking at this character. I'm like, what are they doing in the scene? They're not doing anything.
Good note.
They're just chilling.
As I'm editing my book, I'm like, okay, logging this away, logging this away.
Sometimes it can work. There are just vibe books, but I'm
That-
not a just vibes reader. That's
no,
for sure.
neither am I. So you touched on this a bit in regards to inspiration, but how do you believe your experience as a YouTube creator has influenced your writing style or your approach to storytelling?
I think I get a lot of perspective, especially from presenting the stories and the analysis that I do. I try to get conversations to happen, even if we disagree. I don't mind if we disagree, just don't insult each other is my only thing.
Yeah.
And so then I get to see the perspectives from so many different people. And then that helps me in creating characters that are believably against each other with what they think, but they're not necessarily like bad. Because so often in writing, you can end up, if somebody is antagonistic towards the main character, then they're just bad, as opposed to we just have needs that disagree. And so then it makes it easier. The more you converse, and then like if you present an idea and you see so many different people saying things in a different way that you didn't see, they can look like a collective, but you also realize they're not actually talking to each other. So they're not a collective. And so then it kind of helps you get this perspective of how different people work as a group in interactions. And then that can translate into how to write different people.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially because as a writer, we're sort of inclined to be on our own, right? Just like, okay, I'm going to go into my writing world, my little writing cavern, but then you have to you have to expose yourself to things like that, whether that's in person, out in the world, or online, because you have to see how people really function. Otherwise, you are just going to have your own viewpoint, and you are going to make anyone who doesn't agree with you the antagonist.
And I think that I know one of the things that I say on my YouTube channel is in my intro, I say I'm an idiot. I used to say I'm a robot, but then all the AI stuff happened and I had artists thinking that I was an AI person. And I'm like, okay, let's change that.
Yeah, you don't want to align there.
So I switched to idiot because I'm still learning. So even when I'm putting conversation pieces out there or opinions out there, I don't necessarily think that I'm right. And I'm open to having people disagree and then show me a different perspective and then changing that perspective. And so I think that helps me a lot in writing too, because my writing can actually shift based on conversations that I see happening in the comments.
That's so important just in life in general. I think the world right now is very polarized on various sides, and it's always good to talk to people who can just, have healthy disagreements and learn from them.
Yeah.
So I have one final question, which I'm just going to throw in here because I feel like you're someone who would have fun with this, and I'll give you the backstory. We were having our launch party in Montreal for the Stygian Collection, and we were doing these very tiny interviews just to throw something in our launch video. So we asked 3 questions, and I asked Marc-Andre his questions. Pei and I were asking him this, and then he turned around on us and he said, "It's my turn to interview now." And I'm like, no. And he simply asked us, what is your favorite idea?
What is my favorite idea?
Which I thought was just like, it's so much. And given your, whimsical comment, what is your favorite idea? Your content, rather.
That's such a large idea.
I know.
I have so many things that I really like as an idea.
Yeah.
The casual mysticism I love as an idea because I think some people might find this super like woo woo. I don't know, but I think that okay, cool. So I think that we actually live with this casual mysticism all the time. Like you can feel that spiritual energy that is the world. And like, how is it that so many people on Earth can have the same experiences, but we all just categorize them as something completely different because we're all trying to make sense of the same thing. Even if you look at like religion versus different religions versus like ghosts in general and non-theistic people, like you can see trying to interpret the haunted buildings or the ghost buildings. It's the same symptoms that are trying to be put on a label because we're all trying to interpret this mysticalness that we live with. And then there's no way to do this. So I think that the casual mysticism of reality is just such a really cool concept. And it's also something that connects all of us to one another in one way or another. And that's, I think, one of my favorite things to explore, because it can come out in so many different ways. It's hard to explain. It's such a big idea, so it's hard to explain in such a little way.
But that's an excellent answer, because it's a big question. Like your favorite idea, it's so open-ended and there's just everything out there. But I would agree that that is one of my favorite ideas too. Like one of my other YouTube channels is Haunted Montreal, where we're always doing ghost research and investigations and stuff. So I explore that a lot and try and figure out what exactly is going on out there.
My favorite thing to do when I visit any place is to look at the haunted tours, because not only do you get the ghost stories, but you get this kind of buried local history that nobody else can tell you about. And it's always so incredibly interesting.
That is one of my favorite elements of Haunted Montreal, because our the owner of the company who writes all the blogs that I then work off of for videos, he does so much historical research. So you get this massive picture of the city with ghosts worked into it. And it is one of the best ways to learn about a city, I think.
It's so incredible, for real.
So on that note, to wrap up, just tell us what projects or, other creative endeavors you have on the go. What's coming up in your world right now that you might want to tell the viewers of Stygian?
Well, Bodymore 3 of the Bodymore trilogy is coming out in October. I'm currently just waiting on the cover before the arcs go out, but end of October is when that book actually comes out. I'm currently working on Bodymore 0, which is the prequel to the 3, and it will actually not be the same main character as 1 through 3. It is a side character from books 2 and 3 becoming the main character in book 0. And then eventually, I think the next project is supposed to be Boom Shakalaka Boom, which is the sequel to the Boom Boom Boom, which is about the Ukrainian YouTuber, except in this case, he's going to go and meet his new girlfriend's dad in North Carolina. Okay. And while he's shooting, because he's obviously from Ukraine, and so then he's coming to America for the second time. And he goes into the North Carolina mountain trails to shoot a YouTube video with his girlfriend and accidentally sets off an EMP. And the United States government thinks China is attacking.
Oh, no. And I have to read this as a Ukrainian YouTuber myself. I got to read it. Well, those projects
you can look forward to in my world, hopefully.
I'm looking forward to it. So I'll be linking all of your stuff down below. I'll reach out to you. So anything you want me to share, it will all be in the description. And I really appreciate you chatting with me today. It's been fun and very interesting. And I want to follow all your projects and talk to you more about spooky stuff sometime.
Absolutely. We need to talk super spooky about things. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Bye.